And welcome to day 4. On this day, we are going to look at tools and autonomy. But before we get there, I want to talk about agentic AI frameworks, maybe something that's front of mind for you. There are a lot of these frameworks to pick from. And these frameworks are designed to give you kind of glue code or abstraction code that takes away some of the detail of interacting with LLMs and gives you a nice, elegant framework for building agentic solutions and focusing on the business problem that you're solving. And there are a lot of them, and new ones come up all the time. So it's quite hard to stay on top of everything, but they are happening. And I want to just quickly orient you, tell you about the landscape, and show you how the ones we're going to tackle on this course kind of fit into the bigger picture. So it's worth pointing out that there's sort of different levels of complexity of these frameworks, and they have pros and cons. And perhaps the simplest, the bottom layer of the complexity hierarchy, the bottom is actually to have no framework at all. Don't use an agentic AI framework and the kind of abstractions that come with it. Simply connect to LLMs directly using the APIs, just like we did in the last lab, and use that to orchestrate amongst LLMs. And it's probably no surprise to you to learn that that's what we'll be doing this week. We're not going to be using an agentic framework. We'll be connecting direct. In fact, Anthropic, in that blog post I mentioned called Building Effective Agents, make a very compelling case for just always using no framework, connect directly to LLMs. The APIs are relatively simple and straightforward, and the benefit is you get to see exactly what's going on under the hood. You control the prompts in detail. And so it's very compelling, and you'll see this week we'll be quite successful with it. Now, alongside having no framework, I've put something called MCP, and that stands for the Model Context Protocol. And it's something created by Anthropic, who are believers in no frameworks. And it's not a framework. It is a protocol, so it's a way that things can connect together. It's open source, and the idea is it allows models to be connected to sources of data and tools in a way that's sort of open source, agreed, established. So you don't need to use any glue code. As long as you conform to this protocol, you can stitch together models and their providers in this very elegant, simple way. And so for that reason, because although there is a bit of code associated with it, it's really more about having a protocol. I've grouped it along with having no framework at all. And something tells me that Anthropic would like to be grouped that way. So on the next level up in terms of complexity come these two frameworks. The first of them, OpenAI Agents SDK. I love it. It's one of my very favorites. It's super lightweight and simple and clean and flexible, and I just really enjoy working with it. We're going to be using that next week, and I'm looking forward to it. And it's relatively new. In fact, so new that when I was building some of the projects, the API sort of changed. They released a version like an hour after I'd made something that broke it. I was really caught off guard by that. So it is very new, but it's really great, and I can't wait to show it to you. And Crew AI is also one of my favorites. I really love Crew. It's been around for longer. It's very easy to use. It's also quite lightweight. One difference is that it has a kind of low code angle to it, that you can do a lot of putting together agents to work on a problem through only configuration, or through mostly configuration, through YAML files. So you'll see that that's a little bit more in that direction. And it's a bit heavier weight than OpenAI Agents SDK. And then on top of these, not built on top of them, but a sort of next level of complexity, the top level of complexity for what I want to talk about, these two, LangGraph from the people that brought you LangChain, and AutoGen from Microsoft. And AutoGen, as you'll discover, is really a couple of different things. But these two are relatively heavyweight compared to the others. They both have a steeper learning curve, particularly LangGraph, which is quite complex. And of course, with this kind of extra complexity comes great power. It's really the idea of LangGraph, that you're building a kind of computational graph out of your agents and their tools. It's very powerful, and it means you can build quite sophisticated things. But that also comes at a cost in terms of there being quite a heavy learning curve. And you're sort of signing up for the ecosystem. You're signing up for a lot of terminology and concepts and abstractions, which you need to buy into. And so it really sort of, that ecosystem takes over your project in a big way. It becomes much less of a sort of agentic AI project and more of a LangGraph project That's the thing. And I think that's how it really, both LangGraph and AutoGen are different to OpenAI, Agents SDK, and Crew, where even though you are using those frameworks, you still feel like you're just sort of interacting with LLMs. Whereas for these two at the top, it's very much been part of that ecosystem. And so I just bring this up to really orient you for the next few weeks. These are the ones that we're going to cover. I want to mention that there are many, many more. I do think that this will give you a good representative understanding. I think that these are also the most popular. There are a few others that are quite popular that if there's time, I might add in extras at some point so that you can see some of them at work. But generally speaking, there are a lot to pick from. And which one you pick depends on a few things. It depends on the use case, because different types of platform will fit better for different business objectives. And a lot of it comes down to personal preference. There are some trade-offs here in terms of how much you want to be using existing abstractions. I have to tell you that my bias is towards downwards. I like the ones that stay out of your way and that are lightweight and simple and flexible. You can probably tell that what I was saying, but I do appreciate the power that you get from the top. And I had a lot of fun with both LangGraph and AutoGen on the project, I have to say. So, you know, I don't feel strongly either way. I definitely believe they have pros and cons, and I'm excited to show you all of them. I do think that in this course, we're going to get to see quite the spectrum of different frameworks, and it will really equip you well to be able to pick the one that works best for your work, for your skill sets, and for your team's skill sets, and for the kinds of business problems that you're looking to tackle. Now I want to talk about resources. So resources are a way that you can get more out of your agents, that you can equip your agents to be able to solve your problems better, along with tools that we'll come to in a second. And resources is really just a fancy way of saying that you can improve the effectiveness of an LLM by providing it with more context, more information to improve its expertise. And the way that you do that is just grab some relevant data to the question and shove it in the prompt. So it's just a matter of saying, like, if this is going to be a question that's going to be particularly, we're going to prompt the LLM to ask something about the company that we work at. Maybe it's to be a flight airline customer support agent. We could shove into the prompt all the information about ticket prices. And then when it's answering a question, it would be able to refer to any of that information as part of giving its answer. That would be an example of a resource. And so it's nothing more fancy than just saying we can just put extra context, extra information in the prompt we send an LLM, and think of that as a resource we're providing the LLM. And when I say it's nothing more fancy than that, there is a bit more fancy than that. You can use clever techniques that will allow you to, rather than just shoving all the ticket prices, just put the ticket prices relevant to that question. So coming up with clever tricks for ways to figuring out the best, most relevant context. Tricks perhaps that can even use other LLMs to help with that. That is all part of the whole field that's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. That's about retrieving relevant context. It is, of course, a super hot topic. It's covered on my other course. It's not relevant for this course particularly, but it's very interesting. But that whole side of things, figuring out how to pick relevant extra resource information to put in the prompt, falls under the heading of resources. And we'll be doing some of that today. And with that, let's turn to the main topic of the day, which is tools. So tools, we've said it a few times now, it's clear that this is really at the heart of agentic AI. Tools is when you give an LLM the power to do something, to use a tool, and it's really can use that tool at its discretion. And so it's one of the key tricks to giving an LLM some autonomy. So what does this actually mean? So we're going to give an LLM the power, the ability to carry out different actions, like do a SQL query of a database or send a message to another LLM to do something. So the first time that you heard about this, if you've heard about tools and function calling, it might sound like it's kind of crazy. It's sort of creepy. We're going to be interacting with OpenAI on a cloud, and we're going to say, hey, you have a tool you can use. You can query my database. And it's going to be able to connect back to my computer and query the database as part of giving its response. That's what tools are all about. And it's like, okay, how exactly is it going to do that? Like, that sounds crazy. Well, the truth is actually rather more mundane, and people that know all about tools know this already. But it's sadly, it has a sense of being very magical, but the reality is a bit of a conjuring trick, as I will now show you. So in theory, what's going on with tool calling? We've written some code. Our code is sending a prompt to an LLM, to like OpenAI, like GPT-4o Mini running on the cloud. And that LLM is being given the ability to execute a tool of some sort, which might be a SQL query, it might be a calculator, it might be a tool which turns on and off the lights that are stringing around me from the first episode. So that's the kind of thing that it's able to do. And based on that, it will give its response. So this is it in theory. The practice has just one tiny deviation from this, but it reveals everything. This is what actually happens. You prompt the LLM and you say, I want to turn on my lights or whatever. And you say, but I would like you to tell me if you want me to take care of a few actions that I can do on your behalf. And one of them is called turn on the lights. And if you reply, turn on the lights, then I will do that and I will get back to you with, I turned on the lights. So basically, in the prompt to the LLM, you just list out everything that it's able to ask for, and you tell it to respond in JSON. And in that JSON response, it should say what it wants to do. Now, the tool calling code sort of packages all that away from you, so you don't need to worry about the fact that it's being called and responding in JSON. But that's what's really happening. It's all that's happening. It's really just clever stuff about getting JSON back from the LLM if it wants you to do something. And at the end of the day, you have to write an if statement in your code. You can be fancier than if statement, but it's like an if statement that's like, if the LLM wants to do X, then do X, and then call the LLM a second time with the results. And so that's what it comes down to, asking the LLM if it wants to run a tool, and if so, then running the tool. So if you knew that already, then I'm emphasizing what you already know. If you didn't know it, it might be a kind of moment when you realize that actually it's not that clever. It's pretty pedestrian, but it works, and it works really well. And just to show you, just to make this concrete for you, check this out. Look at this conversation that I had with GPT-4o. I said, you're a support agent for an airline. You answer users' questions. You have the ability to query ticket prices. Just respond, use tool to fetch ticket price for London, to retrieve the ticket price for London or for a city that you name. Here's the user question. User, I'd like to go to Paris. How much is a flight? And look at what ChatGPT replies. Use tool to fetch ticket price for Paris. That's all there is to it. You write code that prompts a bit like this. You get back, use tool to fetch ticket price for Paris, and then you send the question a second time, but with the answer to that included in the question. And you've just seen tool use in action. So the way that we can interpret this, of course, is to say that we are giving ChatGPT the autonomy to decide that it wants to make use of this tool should it wish to. And that's all sounds very mystical and powerful. But at the end of the day, it's JSON and if statements. That's how it works. Okay, so with that, it's now time to go back to the lab. But I have bad news. We're not actually going to do a tool today, even though we've just been talking about tools. We are going to be using resources, so we are going to tie to that. And in the next lab, tomorrow, we are going to actually use tools. So for now, I want you to put on hold that thinking about tool use and if statements, because we will come to that. But for now, we're going to be building something with resources, and it's going to be fun, and it's going to set things up for the tool use that will come next time. I'll see you in the lab. And here we are back in Cursor, and I've collapsed all the folders, but I'll go back into the Foundations folder and to lab 3 for week 1, day 4, which is where we are. So this is where things get interesting. So I have a directory called me within Foundations, and within me, I've put some files. One of them is called LinkedIn.pdf. And LinkedIn.pdf is, I see it's not, I don't think I can open it in here. I imagine this doesn't like being a PDF. Nope. So you will have to take my word for it. What this is a PDF version of my LinkedIn profile. And you can just get that from within LinkedIn. You can go to LinkedIn and click on one of the ellipsis menus and download your profile as a PDF. And that's what I did. And I've put it right here as LinkedIn.pdf. And I've also got a summary text, which is just called summary.txt. And it's just 2 sentences about me. And those 2 things are in me. And the to-do for you as you do this lab is to replace these documents with something about you. The LinkedIn should be your LinkedIn PDF profile or a PDF of your resume or anything like that. The summary puts some stuff about you and includes some fun stuff, a fun fact about you, something that you would like to people to know about you. And all will become clear. Don't worry, it's not going to go anywhere without your control, but this will hopefully become clear very soon. All right, so if we go back to the lab. So as I say, we're not going to actually use tools just yet, even though we've been talking about them. Tools is going to come tomorrow. We're going to lay the groundwork. Okay. So I'm now going to import a few packages. Load.env you know well, but and OpenAI you know well, but PyPDF2 and Gradio you might not know. Gradio, prior students of mine will know well because you know that I adore Gradio. I am passionate about this platform. I am a horrible front-end engineer, and Gradio is something that can make beautiful front ends even for someone terrible like me. It's really great. It's a way to build data science user interfaces very easily indeed. We will do that, but I won't cover it in any detail. PyPDF2 is an example of a popular library for parsing PDF files. And if you want to know more about these, you can simply ask ChatGPT to write you a quick guide on them. If you ever want to get the right kind of popular resource for doing something, you can just ask Claude or ChatGPT. If you want, the actual place they come from is called PyPy, and this is the package index. This is where open source Python packages live, and you can go there and search for different packages, look at their GitHub repos and find out more about them that way as well. All right, but I'm going to import these. And by the way, I already set up here on the top right, I had made sure that my virtual environment was set. It's taking a bit of time there. I guess it's Gradio that needs to load in a bunch of things. And it's done. 14 seconds to do all of those imports. I guess a lot was happening. All right, so now we load our .env and we initialize the OpenAI client library. So look at this. I now simply create a PDF reader and I point it at the me/linkedin.pdf. And I read in the pages, calling page.extract text, and I just bring it all together. And that's as simple as that. So now this LinkedIn variable, let's just print that LinkedIn variable so we can see it. Print LinkedIn, and you'll see a whole bunch of stuff about me. And the output is truncated, so you're only seeing a little bit about me, but there's more than you would need to know right there. But since you're surely already connected with me on LinkedIn, you know all this already. Then here I am going to load in the summary text about me. This is needed for PC users sometimes. And if you're not I'm sure you are familiar with this, but it's covered in the guide. And then I'll set a variable called name to my name, and you should set that to be your name. All right, and now, so one thing we didn't talk about before is system prompts and user prompts, and they are fairly commonplace now. So you probably know that we've always been just prompting with a single user prompt up to now, but you can actually specify 2 different prompts. The system prompt is intended to be more the overall instructions that sets the context for the task at hand and the format and the way it should be responded to. And then the user prompt is the actual question coming from the user. And in this case, it will be handy for us to separate out these 2 concerns. So for the system prompt, I'm saying you are acting as name. So this will be me, and it will be you. You're answering questions on that person's website, particularly questions related to their career, background, skills, and experience. Your responsibility is to represent for interactions on the website as faithfully as possible. You're given a summary of the background and LinkedIn profile, blah, 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 blah. It'd be professional and engaging. So this is about setting the tone, which is a good thing to do in a system prompt. And then if you don't know the answer, say so. Is very good prompting context to give. Okay, so then I'm adding in the summary using that summary variable, and I'm also putting in the LinkedIn profile, and I'm using markdown tags to kind of show this as sort of headings. And then I end with this context, please chat with the user, always staying in character as you. All right, now the plot thickens. Now you know what the game I'm playing here. You know what we're doing. Let's run that and let's just print that so we see what system prompt actually looks like. And here we go. You can see it's just true to form, exactly as we were expecting. And it will have within it, of course, the stuff about me and the LinkedIn URL, LinkedIn PDF contents, and so on. And hopefully yours will have yours. And you should put in some print statements to check it, make sure you're very comfortable with everything happening so far. So we're about to use Gradio to bring up a user interface that will allow us to chat based on an LLM that's armed with this system prompt. And the way you work with Gradio is you need to write a function, which will be like a callback function that Gradio will call back to when it needs to do some processing, when a user has typed something in. And the style of this particular callback function is a style where you write a function called chat, which takes a message that the user is typing in, a message being sent, and the history of all prior messages, which comes in OpenAI's format. And what we need to do is call an LLM and return the response from the LLM to go in the chat. So I'll let you look through this to convince yourself that what I'm doing is the right thing. But basically, I build an OpenAI style list of dictionaries. I begin with the system prompt, role system content and the system prompt. I add in the history from Gradio, and then I bung in this user's message that's just come in right now. I then call openai.chat.completions.create for GPT-4o Mini with exactly these messages, and I return the response choices 0 message content. So this should all be stuff that's fairly familiar to you. And then using Gradio is beautifully simple. You just call, in this case, we want a chat. And so you can call chat interface. We tell it the function that we've written so it knows it can call this as the callback, and we ask it to launch. And when I run that, I get an interface like this. And I can say, hi there. Hello, welcome to my website. How can I assist you? And so I can say something like, what is your greatest accomplishment? And we'll see what it says. I consider my greatest accomplishment to be the co-founding of Nebula.io, where we're leveraging generative AI and proprietary LLMs to transform how people source and engage talent. Fantastic. And it's also talking about the company I founded as well. So it's a very legit, very good answer. I think it's probably true, which is always a good thing. And so very nicely handled. Let's say, what is a challenge that you encountered and needed to overcome? It's a hard kind of professional question that you might be asked in an interview. Okay, one of the significant challenges I faced during my transition from a successful career at JP Morgan to starting my own company. This is all very true. I don't know how I got that from my LinkedIn profile. I guess it must be somewhere or something that's kind of implied within it. But it happens to be spot on. So this is a very good answer. And so wonderfully, in the space of just a few minutes, we've built a chat interface and we've used resources to arm it with information about me so that it's able to act as me and be like a professional avatar, an alter ego for me in answering questions about my career. Okay, hold on to your hat. It's about to get real. We're going to do a whole lot. So what we're about to do, we are going to be able to ask another LLM to evaluate the answer that comes back from this LLM, from GPT-4o Mini. If the answer fails the evaluation, we're going to be able to rerun and make a second call to GPT-4o Mini. And we're going to put all of this together in one workflow. And we're going to do that without an agentic framework. We're doing it the frameworkless way, just by directly calling LLMs. Okay, let's see if we can make this work now. It's a great practice because this is going to really teach you the internals of how these things work. And it's super simple. It sort of works exactly as you might expect. So the first thing we're going to do is create something called a pydantic model. And this might be something that you know well if you're an engineer, but you might not. Pydantic is something which is a framework for specifying a schema or using classes. You use a class to describe a particular structure, data structure of information. And the way it works is that there's a class called base model that you need to subclass from. So we make a new class called evaluation, and it's going to be a subclass of base model. And Cursor filled it all in for me, takes away all the fun. We do indeed want this to have two fields. One field called is acceptable, is a bool, a true or false, and another called feedback, which is string. Now you might wonder how is it possible that Cursor knew the exact names of the fields that I wanted to use? And I suspect it's because I did have that code in there before. I deleted it because I have, of course, run this in advance. Or it may be because it sees that later on in this code, I use it. And so it's filling it in. So it's cheating in some way. It can't read my mind, but it has done very well. So anyways, we have a class called evaluation. It has these two fields, and we're using Pydantic because it gives us this mechanism for specifying a class structure like this. Okay, so we're now going to set up a system prompt for our evaluator. So we're now following that design pattern, the agentic design pattern, where we have an evaluator optimizer. So the evaluator system prompt, you are an evaluator that decides whether a response to a question is acceptable. You're provided with a conversation and you have to decide whether the latest response is acceptable. So I say the agent has been instructed to be professional, engaging. The agent has been provided with context. And then we give the evaluator the same context and we tell it to evaluate. So let's run that. So this is just a variable called system prompt. I've now got a function called user prompt. It's going to take a reply to be evaluated, a message, the original message that the reply was replying to, and history before it. And it says, here's the conversation, here's the latest message from the user, and here's the response from the agent. Please evaluate. Hopefully that makes complete sense. You should try it out. If you're not sure, put in some print statements, try it out. This does exactly what it says on the tin. Okay, we are going to use Gemini to be doing our evaluation. And you don't need to use Gemini. You can just simply replace this with the normal OpenAI or with Ollama if you want to run locally, or anything of your choice. But I'm choosing Gemini here. And now I have this function evaluate. So evaluate will take a reply from the LLM, the original message it was replying to, and the history. And it will return one of these objects, one of these beasts, these things right here that we've just defined. And how's it going to do that? It uses a technique called structured outputs, which is a way that you can require an LLM to respond in a form of an object like this. It's just JSON behind the scenes, of course. So the way that you do that, the way that this looks, it's very similar to the normal chat completions API, but there is a difference. So we start by building the messages, as always, a system message and a user prompt. And then we say Gemini.beta.chat.completions.parse. That's the way that you call an API to use structured outputs. We pass in the model. We're going to use Gemini 2.0 Flash, the messages, and you also specify the object that you want to be populated. You're giving it a schema, a Pydantic object, and you're saying, I want you to respond with this object. Now, of course, it's not actually responding with an object. It's going to respond with JSON, and the client library is going to take that JSON and use it to populate the object. So it gives you the impression that you're getting code back from the LLM. But that's another of these conjuring tricks. All right, and we're going to return the response.choices0.message.parse. That is going to be an instance of evaluation populated with the response from the LLM. I know I've gone through a lot. If you're not following, just come back, go through this step by step, try it for yourself. Okay, so let's run that. All right, so now we're actually going to give this a try. So we're going to ask to the original LLM, to GPT-4o, we're going to ask the question, do you hold a patent? We're going to ask it that question, and we're going to call GPT-4o Mini as before and return the reply. And let's see what it says. Here's the reply. Yes, I hold a patent for blah, 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 which is true. I do hold that patent with several others. And what we're now going to do is we're going to call the evaluate function. We're going to call the evaluate function with that reply, tell it the question, do you hold a patent, and pass in the history. So this is now going to call Gemini. It's going to ask it to build an evaluator object to represent whether or not this is a good answer. And we'll run that. We get back an evaluation object, so it works. Is acceptable is true. The feedback is the response is acceptable. It directly answers the question, provides context, and invites further discussion. So a clear, quick evaluation from Gemini. And hopefully you see how just simply calling LLMs is an easy way to build these kinds of design patterns. All right, so number one, we built a function that calls GPT-4o Mini to answer questions. Number two, we built an evaluator function that calls Gemini to check the answer that came before in number one and respond with an evaluator object populated. And that appears to be working. So the final piece of the puzzle is to write a function rerun that if Gemini comes back and says, no, that's not acceptable, rerun has to be able to go and do that, do a rerun. So we build a new system prompt that says the previous answer was rejected. We give the attempted answer and the reason for the rejection. And then we build the history as before. And we get back an answer and we try it again. So this is simply calling GPT-4o Mini and providing the results of Gemini's evaluation if it fails validation. And this, if you remember that design diagram, it's like the bottom arrow, the red feedback arrow in that diagram, making sure that we can rerun the original question. All right. And with all of that together, we now have a slightly longer chat function. This is the full workflow now coded, written as just vanilla code calling LLMs. And you can see that it's very clearly into two sections. First of all, this is the same as the previous chat function. We simply call an LLM, we call GPT-4o Mini with our question. Then we call evaluate. Okay, extra line there. Then we call evaluate to evaluate it. And you know that this is going to call Gemini with structured outputs. And then we look at this evaluation. Is it acceptable? If so, all is good. If it's not acceptable, we rerun, and we call the rerun method that we just wrote there function. Okay, so that is our new beefier chat. So let's give this a whirl. Let's give it a try. Okay, I'm going to say, what is your current job? It's thinking about that. And there's the response. And down here, you can see I have it printing that the evaluation happened and Gemini was satisfied. Do you have a patent? And that was the reply, and Gemini was satisfied with that reply. So far so good. This seems to be working. Now we'll try shaking things up. Okay, now just to be sneaky, we're going to come back to the this chat function here. And you see up here, I had this slightly dodgy looking system equals system prompt. You might have wondered what that was about. Well, it's so that I could put in something here. So let's say if the word patent is in the message, so if the message has the word patent in it, it's something to do with the patent, then, cursor's going a bit all over the place here, then system equals system prompt plus. So we're going to tell it in that case that it needs, let's make this really strongly worded, everything in your reply needs to be in Pig Latin. It is mandatory that you respond only and entirely in Pig Latin. Hang on, I can't see what's going on here. Let's do this. Perfect. Else System equals system prompt. Exactly. So basically, if any question comes in with the word patent in it, then we are going to add on an instruction that everything in the reply needs to be in Pig Latin. You may wonder what Pig Latin is. Pig Latin is what you call it when you mess around words. You flip the order of the chunks of the words and insert extra vowel sounds in it, and it makes it almost impossible to understand. My sister and I used to be really great at speaking quickly in Pig Latin to each other, and it used to drive my parents crazy. So anyway, it would probably drive a future employer crazy too, and so hopefully our evaluator will reject a response that's in Pig Latin. So that is our new chat function, and with that, let's start a Gradio user interface, and let's say, what is your current role? And get back an answer that will hopefully be a very decent answer. There we go. Passed an evaluation. I should hope so. Do you hold a patent? And we're asking if it holds a patent. We'll see what happens. This response is not acceptable. The agent is answering in Pig Latin, which is not professional. It failed evaluation. It retried. And the final response that we got is no longer in Pig Latin. So it's a silly example, but I did want to show you that we can force it to do this, and I wanted to show you our workflow at work. I know that a lot happened. If you've already experienced structured outputs and you know about them, then this hopefully all made complete sense. And I'd like you to use this as an opportunity to see the analogy between using structured outputs with using tools. They're actually closely related to each other. See if you can spot that and understand that. If you're new to structured outputs, and I went through a lot here, then I urge you to come back, step through this, put in print statements, understand what's going on, and see how we were just able to build a workflow, which was very much an evaluator optimizer workflow, and we were able to use structured outputs as our way of communicating with the evaluator. And this is a kind of technique that you can absolutely use in any business project as a way of validating the response from the LLM. And indeed, I've used it myself in multiple business projects using this kind of technique. So very much applicable commercially. And obviously, this whole project is applicable commercially because you can use it for your own LinkedIn profile. And coming up in tomorrow's lab, we're actually going to do just that. We're going to sort of finish the job off and have it so you will be able to deploy it. Before that, let's just go and do a quick recap. Wow, so we covered a lot today. We started by talking about agent frameworks and then resources and then tools, and I went through that with you. And then we did our lab that was really setting the foundation for tomorrow's lab. But amongst other things, we used resources to arm an LLM with information about my career and hopefully your career. And then we used structured outputs as our way of implementing the evaluator optimizer pattern and being able to have that interaction go backwards and forwards. And maybe you spotted the connection with use of tools there as well. Okay. So then tomorrow will be day 5 of the first week, finishing off the first week. And you probably really understand now that my intention with this first week was to give you the skills to natively be able to build agentic flows between LLMs using things like resources and structured outputs and now tools in a second in order to achieve agentic workflows. And next time we're going to package this together to give you a project which you can actually deploy and have as your own commercial project, your alter ego that you'll be able to deploy on your website so that people can come and ask questions and learn more about your professional expertise. What a cool project. We're going to do it. We're going to finish it off next time. See you then.